Brenda, I'm going to be asking you questions the whole time, so just get ready.
Okay, perfect.
Have you heard of peptide injections?
I've heard the word, but I don't know what it means.
Okay, don't know what it means. I have to be honest with you. I mean, this is new enough that up until recently, I didn't even really know what they were talking about when they were talking about peptide injections. I mean, so they are kind of hot right now, and so they can be given as an injectable, a topical, or an oral, but injectables are the most common for the med spas and the wellness group. So today we're doing a segment on peptide injections. Are they legit? Are they hype? Could they be dangerous? So Brenda, I'm about to answer all your questions. You always wanted to know about peptide injections. So what are peptides? So peptides are short chain amino acids, which are basically the building blocks of proteins. And one of the functions that peptides do is they act as signaling molecules. And so they can tell one cell to do something. And we already have these things out in the medical field. One of the most common ones we've talked about many, many times on the show is Ozempic or semaglutide. That's a peptide. What it does is it activates the receptors in and around the stomach that tell you you're full and also slow down gastric emptying. So these things have been around forever. Insulin's another one. Insulin that's created pharmaceutically is another type of peptide. So these things have a lot of very, very legitimate uses. There's tons of research on some of them, but they do kind of fall into two categories. So there's the regulated FDA-approved peptides, which would be, again, like semaglutide or insulin. And then there's the experimental ones, and these are not FDA approved, they are not regulated, and that's where all of the aesthetic peptides that you see now on social media fall under, is the experimental categories. And in the aesthetics world, these things are marketed as a life hack tool for stimulating collagen to tighten your skin, burning fat, getting better sleep, promoting hair growth, slowing down the aging process. I mean, I've seen these things, advertised to basically cure everything, more or less. And now, Britta, do you know of any? I'm sure you've heard of peptides. Have you heard of any specific ones, or you just heard the words peptides?
I've definitely heard of it.
But not anyone specific?
No.
Okay. I just was curious. I personally didn't know a ton about these before I did the research for these two segments. Mm-hmm. I knew that they were out there, but there's a lot of stuff in aesthetics where it comes up and it's new and it's hot and people talk about it and then it kind of fades away. And so, I didn't pay a whole lot of attention. But as these things get bigger and bigger, and in fact, the whole reason I am doing these segments is because somebody sent me the article for the second segment we're going to do, and I was like, okay, I probably better brush up on these. So again, these things are given in multiple forms. There's oral, like a pill, there's topical, like a cream, and then there's injectable. And the reason the injectable ones are so much more popular is because the other two versions are really not effective whatsoever, because the skin basically will block the larger molecules or the peptides from absorbing. So you can put these peptides in a topical solution on your skin, but it doesn't penetrate the skin. The skin's actually a really good barrier. It's what it's designed for, is to block things from getting in. And so the topical versions are not really great because they don't penetrate, so they don't work. And they have a very similar problem with the oral versions, is that the stomach acid breaks down peptides. I mean, that's what our stomach acid does. It breaks down protein. You eat a steak, eat a hamburger, your stomach acid breaks that down. And so oral peptides also not very effective. But injectable can be effective. For example, that's why semaglutide's injected, insulin's injected. And so it all kind of makes sense when you think of it like that. So I was going to go over some of the more popular peptides that are out there, and I'm going to talk about what's claimed that they do. And these are things that you'll see a lot at like wellness centers. Some med spas have them. Although I haven't seen a lot of plastic surgeons pushing these. I did see one dermatologist that was talking about peptides. And I mentioned that just because, a lot of times if the people who are really the experts are not jumping on board with something, then you might be wary. You get a lot of primary care doctors pushing these, which, I mean, no offense to them, they serve a valuable purpose, but I'm not sure it's aesthetics. So anyway, I was going to talk about some of these more popular ones. So there's GHK-Cu, which is copper peptide. So this one is claimed to promote collagen, which would tighten your skin, increase blood vessel growth, which also is good for your skin, regulate inflammation, now that's also good, and improve wound healing. So, okay, that sounds pretty great, if it actually works and it was safe. So that's one of the really popular ones. They call it copper peptide. The next one is body protection compound, also known as BPC-157. This one is promoted to improve in healing of injuries and decrease inflammation. Okay, also good. There is ipamorelin, IPAMORELIN, also known as CJC. Oh no, it's ipamorelin's combined with CJC-1295. So that's two peptides that are oftentimes given as a combo treatment. So together, these are said to improve fat loss. Well, okay, that's encouraging, something you'd want. Give you better sleep, improved recovery, so like post-workout recoveries, and then also anti-aging. Okay, again, if these things were effective, that would all be things that are very positive and things that you could easily, entice someone to want to take. The other one that's fairly well known is sermorelin, SERMORELIN. I'm probably butchering that. This is a growth hormone releasing hormone. So this increases lean muscle mass, improves skin thickness, and also is said to improve cognition. Okay, so we talked about a bunch of these peptides, right, and all the things that they're supposed to do. And if you get on these websites for some of the wellness centers and the med spas, they will say, oh, there's all this research to show that these things are the greatest and they're very effective. So is that true? Well, sort of, not really. The research on peptides, for the most part, is either lab research or it's animal research. So what that means kind of in a very simple manner is instead of these research papers or research projects doing a very in-depth study on actual humans where there are no, or at least less possibilities of any bias being injected, the research that's being touted for these peptides is almost entirely lab or animal models. And why that's important is that it doesn't necessarily correlate to humans. And you see this a lot. I see it literally all the time in the aesthetics world where some product will come out and they'll say, oh, the research shows that this does X, Y, and Z. And then you look at it and it's lab research. They basically, for example, they might put this compound in with some cells and it stimulates the cells to do something. They say, oh, well, because it does this in a petri dish, if you put this on your skin, then you're going to, have anti-aging properties, which does not correlate. It might correlate, but it certainly doesn't guarantee it at all, and it's very commonly it doesn't. What it does in a petri dish or what it might do in an animal like a mouse or a rat does not correlate to humans. So we don't really consider that really good data.
Yeah, that's sketchy, in my opinion.
It's a little misleading, if there's.
I wouldn't trust it personally if I knew that.
Yeah, if you're going to take these products and use them, you want to know that one, do they work, and two, are they safe? And so anything that's FDA regulated, and I get that the FDA is a very large government organization that sometimes can be overbearing. You see that. But at the end of the day, I do feel that the things that they approve are safe and effective for the most part. Maybe something slips through the cracks occasionally. But if you have none of that regulation, then you really don't know what you're getting. And if you don't have research to show that something's effective, then you also don't know what you're getting, and it may not be safe. Some of these things do have a few human models, but the ones that do, the models are very, very small and not what's considered high-quality studies. But I'm going to ask you a question, because I think I'm about doing a segment on this next week. Are you familiar with the different types of research methodologies and what they mean? I probably not, right? Or are you? Maybe. So for example, if somebody says like a cohort study or a double-blind randomized study, does that mean anything to you? And I'm not putting you on the spot. I'm asking you as like a non-medical person because.
I don't think so.
Okay, fine. That's all I was asking, is like in the medical world, when we're looking at research on medical topics, we always want to know what kind of study it is. And I just didn't know how much of that is common knowledge. Yet, you have to forgive me, Brennan, because I've been in this game too long. And so things that are just common knowledge to me, I forget sometimes or not. So that's why I was asking you. I didn't mean to put you on the spot.
No, you're good.
You shouldn't. I wouldn't expect you to know that. I'm actually thinking about doing a segment on different types of studies. So I think it's important because it makes people more aware, right?
Whenever you talked about insulin earlier, I think that like rang a bell, but
right, like insulin. That if you have diabetes and you get insulin shots.
That, but that's
that's a peptide.
Knowledge.
You're going to be very educated on medical topics. It was funny when Trey left here, he was like, I feel like I really know a lot about plastic surgery and medicine.
I want to go back and watch like all the old ones just so I have his info on top of mine so he doesn't have any extra knowledge.
It would take you a long time. I think there's 150 episodes now.
Definitely.
We're going to build a new knowledge base for you.
Perfect.
I'm very excited. You'll be able to impress your friends at parties with useless information about peptides and other very exciting topics.
Yeah, or my friends that are in like medical school. Like I have a handful of friends that are doing all that. So
oh, do you?
I'll just impress them. Yeah.
There you go. Excellent. Right. Yeah. All right. So again, there's not a whole lot of evidence that these things are effective. And to me, that's the most important thing. When somebody comes to my office and they're pushing a product that they want me to try, the very first thing I say is, what does the research show? Because that's all I care about. I don't want someone's story about how, someone used this and it had these great results. What does the research show? If you don't have research that shows that it's effective, then to me, it's a non-starter. The other thing is the risk and safety concerns. These are non-FDA approved products, which means there's no regulation in their creation. A lot of these are made in compounding pharmacies, which I'm not like poo-pooing compounding pharmacies because we actually use one. We've been using one for over a decade, and I think it's really good. Their products have been excellent. We've not had any problems with them. But there is no regulation in these peptides, and so it does bring up the concern of contaminants or potency. Issues where they're not all the same dosage, which could potentially be harmful. These things do have various side effects. There also is the issue that you're injecting something into your body, which runs the risk of things like infection. And that's fairly minor, I guess, but it's definitely worth mentioning. And there are a little bit of ethical concerns about these because a lot of these are touted as all natural, but these are biosynthesized, medications. They're not all natural. They didn't squeeze them out of a plant or anything. So I do have a little bit of issue or concern with peptide injections for aesthetics. The two most important ones being that literally there's no research to show that these are effective. And there's not any extensive amount of data to show that they're safe long term. So yeah, I really can't encourage people to do these. I don't think it's insane if you want to try them. I think that you would have to go into it with low expectations and hope to be surprised, and also the realization that there's some risk to doing it. I don't think they're going to kill you, but
what's like the price range for these?
That's all over the map. I think it depends on the specific ones. I think they run in the hundreds of dollars for injections. But yeah, I was trying to nail that down. I should have put a little bit more information about that. Yeah, they're not super expensive. They typically want you to do a series of them. But yeah, in the range of hundreds, depending on which one it is. And of course, that's per injection, so multiply that by how many they want you to get. It's all really new, so it's all over the map as far as like what people are doing with it.
That makes sense.
So yeah, I'm a little leery of this. Again, I'm always leery of treatments that are pushed by people who are not considered aesthetic experts. You don't see plastic surgeons pushing peptide injections, at least that I've seen. And even dermatologists haven't. I saw one dermatologist talking about it when I was doing research. Maybe there's more. But yeah, it's a lot of the wellness crowd, and some of the med spas, which could be run by literally anyone these days because the laws are so loose. So, But yeah, we'll keep on top of this one. I'm sure more data will come out. This thing's kind of hit pretty suddenly, in my opinion, and I think we're going to be hear more about these. It also is possible to just kind of fade away. I mean, if they're not very effective, people will quit doing them, and then the market will collapse, and that'll be that. So we'll see.